It has been said that people can lie through their teeth, but their teeth cannot lie. Like fingerprints, teeth are unique to the individual, and in proving identification and solving crimes, they have often been the means of providing conclusive evidence. And our next pioneering murder case, during the Second World War, was central to the development of forensic dentistry. On Friday, the 17th of July, 1942, a workman demolishing a bombed-out chapel in South London made a grisly discovery. Underneath a stone slab, he saw, laid out before him, a skeleton, pieces of flesh still clinging to its bones. Assuming that it was the remains of a victim of the Blitz, he lifted it out with his shovel. The head stayed on the ground. Once the police arrived, the skeleton was wrapped and taken to the public mortuary, which is where the forensic pathologist, Dr. Keith Simpson, first made its acquaintance.
The first thing that he noticed was a womb in the remaining parts of the body, which clearly identified the sex as female. He also noticed a yellowish deposit and charred bones.
This was wartime London, and the sight of dead bodies was not uncommon, but Simpson could not write this off as a casualty of war. There were too many unanswered questions. What was the identity of the body, and how had it come to be so neatly laid out under the floor of the chapel? There had indeed been an ancient cemetery on the site, but this skeleton was not ancient. It had soft tissues attached. Simpson estimated that the woman had only been dead for about 12 to 18 months. The chapel had been bombed almost 2 years before, in 1940. So, was he looking at a murder victim? Simpson was given permission to take the remains to his laboratory, where he could attempt complete reconstruction. He observed that the head had been cut off, not broken off from the skeleton, and that both of the arms had been severed at the elbows and the legs at the knees. As he later wrote, "Bomb blasts can do strange things, I know from experience, but not as strange as that. Someone had dismembered the body." Simpson established that its age was between 40 and 50 by measuring the skull plates.
He would have calculated the height using the well-known Pearson formulae. He had one long bone available, the humerus, and from it he calculated that the height of the deceased was 5 feet and half an inch, important in establishing her identity.
Simpson spent 2 days sifting through earth where the body had been found, trying to locate some bones that were missing from the skeleton. He had no luck, but he spotted something else. On the earth where the skeleton had lain was a yellowish powder. A sample was taken for analysis, and it was found to be slaked lime. Somebody had unwittingly preserved the one piece of evidence that proved that this woman had indeed been murdered. For unlike lime, which burns through human flesh, slaked lime acts as a preservative. The vital evidence lay in the voice box. Once dissected, it could be seen that the thyroid cartilage was fractured, with a little blood clot around it.
Simpson knew that this bone is never broken spontaneously. It only occurs when the neck is gripped by a thumb or fingertip, and the finding is characteristic of strangulation.
So this was now a murder case, but without the victim's identity, there was little hope of finding the murderer.
In the case of an unidentified body, we rely on a full post-mortem dental charting. And this is going to be matched, we hope, against the dental records of a known person. And if there is a match, then we have a positive identification. If the dental records do not match that of the unknown body, we have found who it isn't. And that is sometimes just as important as saying who it is.
Simpson turned his attention to the teeth. The lower jaw of the skull had gone completely, but the upper jaw was, as Simpson put it, a mine of information. The police, trawling the list of missing persons, spotted one Rachel Dobkin, the estranged wife of a fire warden who worked in the building next to the chapel where the skeleton had been found. Harry Dobkin owed his wife maintenance money for their son, and she was known to have arranged to visit him the day she was last seen. When traced, Rachel Dobkin's dentist stated that he had last treated her in 1939. From his records, he drew a diagram of her upper jaw. The police then took him to see Keith Simpson. Simpson described it as the most dramatic moment he could ever remember. The skull lay upside down on a bench, and when the dentist entered the room and saw it, he shouted out, "That's my patient, that's Mrs. Dobkin. Those are my fillings." The diagram was an exact match with the teeth in the upper jaw, molars, fillings, marks from the metal claws of a dental plate. The dentist had also drawn in some fragments of roots, which he thought he might have left in the jaw when he'd pulled some teeth years before. When Simpson had the jaw x-rayed, there they were. Photographic evidence, too, helped to match the skull to the missing woman. Her husband, Harry, had been brought in for questioning when she was first reported missing. He had admitted that he'd had tea with her on the day she'd disappeared, but he claimed he hadn't seen her since. Dobkin was already known to the police. In the past, his wife had reported him for assault on 4 separate occasions. Now, months later, police confronted him with the news that his wife's body had been found, that she had been murdered. Dobkin maintained that he knew nothing, but the police had been gathering important information. Several days after Rachel was last seen, a fire at the chapel near where Dobkin was fire warden had been reported, but not by Dobkin. The cause of the fire was a mystery, but with London in the grip of the Blitz, it was quickly forgotten. But could that fire have been responsible for the blackened bones and burnt skull buried at the chapel, a failed attempt by the murderer to dispose of the body? Several witnesses, including a police constable, stated that they had seen Dobkin weeks after the mysterious fire lurking around the ruined chapel, even though he'd left his fire-watching job and moved away from the area. Having considerable circumstantial evidence against Harry Dobkin, the police charged him with the murder of his wife. Dobkin pleaded not guilty. His defense decided they would challenge the forensic evidence. They queried Keith Simpson's calculations concerning the skeleton and subjected Rachel Dobkin's dentist to intense questioning, but their evidence proved conclusive. After only 20 minutes of deliberation, the jury pronounced Harry Dobkin guilty of the murder of his wife. He was duly hanged.
It has been worked out, the chances of 2 people having the same dentitions is 2.5 billion times 1 against the possibility. But one can only say that in one's experience, I have never found 2 sets of teeth to be the same.
Though the interdependence of the forensic sciences is clear, in the area of identification, as both the cases of Haig and Dobkin show, forensic dentistry is vital. But of course, a set of dentures is just one of the intriguing objects to be found within the Black Museums.
Next tonight we'll be retelling the story of a British SAS commando who made military history with his Gulf War escape, and Ronnie Biggs' tale of how he eluded Scotland Yard for years. It's Escape Stories next.